Right. Your biggest risk as an SMB with AI is not an attack. It's that it just does something dumb on its own. I was trying to decode some traffic from anti-gravity. I tried to reconfigure my computer to get around some policies that were blocking it. And I was like, whoa, okay, hold on. And it will just do that because the AI is trying to solve a problem.
You are listening to the Mindful Business Security Show, brought to you by Focivity, where we answer your questions and simplify information security for small businesses. Get the clarity you need to focus on the things that matter.
Well, hey there. You're listening to the Mindful Business Security Show. I'm your host, Accidental CISO. Welcome. AI is moving fast. And for a lot of small business leaders, the challenge isn't just deciding whether or not to use it, but figuring out how to help their organizations learn about it safely. In this episode, we're going to talk about building institutional knowledge around AI, so your team can experiment, adapt, create value without introducing unnecessary risk. Most organizations already know how to adopt new technologies. We just have to apply those same fundamentals to AI in a more disciplined way. If you haven't already subscribed, please be sure to hit the subscribe button. You can find the show in your favorite podcast app. I'm continuing my big live streaming experiment here. If you want to join in live, we record the third Friday of each month at 3:00 p.m. Eastern. You can find links to the live stream on the show page at focivity.com/podcast. My guest today brings a unique blend of deep technical expertise and strategic leadership to the conversation. He has a law degree from the University of Edinburgh and a master's in law and finance from Oxford. He's way smarter than me, folks. He's held senior roles, including Director of Tech and Product at Aller Media and CTO at Pistachio, where he focused on security awareness and insider threat detection. Today, he's the co-founder and CEO of Embroidery, building AI-driven threat detection for AI agents. And when he's not building businesses, software, or AI agents, he enjoys reconnecting with the analog world with painting. Welcome to the show, Zack Korman.
Thanks for having me. Did I tell you the painting thing, and I forgot I've told you, or did you dig it up somewhere?
No, you mentioned it. When I
Okay.
emailed you a while back asking for some, just kind of a list of stuff to use to hype you up. You mentioned in there that you do painting, and I love the quirky hobbies and stuff.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. But I think it's a really healthy thing for folks to have like analog hobbies, especially working in tech, because this industry can kind of beat us down a little bit. So, I think that's fantastic that you're doing that. How long have you been painting?
Oh, not long at all. I started a year, 2 years ago, maybe.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So are you self-taught, or did you start with taking a painting class and decide this is fun? And
Oh no, I'm terrible at it. Oh my God, no, I'm really bad at it. I just do it a lot, or at least did it before I had a kid, at least. So yeah, I still do it, but
people do a lot of things before they have kids.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
Oh man. How would you describe your style? What kind of style do you do?
I got shamed yesterday online because I said that Mark Rothko is a good painter, and Uwu Underground is really mad about that, and even sent me messages being like, "Ooh, that Rothko is bad." Rothko is my second favorite painter of all time. Behind, there's a painter named Calaminis, who's a contemporary artist. Both of them just pure abstract expressionists, very broad stroke. There are no figures. I try to imitate this because I don't have the talent to paint something real. So boxes and squares and colors. Yeah.
Yeah. And what does that creative outlet then mean to you? How has that affected your life? Has it, changed anything or improved anything?
I think it's just been weird because I've been the least likely person to be, I have a law degree, and then I went into tech, and you would say I'm highly analytical, structured, rigorous person. And suddenly I'm what if we made the boxes but pretty? And so even my fiance was sort of what are you doing? It's kind of weird. But it's been fun because you get to explore something that you might suck at. Whereas I don't suck at a lot of tech, right? Like I'm probably pretty good at it. Whereas like I suck at painting. And so it really is kind of fun to get to explore something where it's okay to be terrible.
I like that. I like that a lot. It's to get good at something, you have to let yourself suck at it first. It's an important step in the process. So yeah, very cool. So I think the talk about creativity and those kind of outlets are an interesting segue into some of the AI stuff that we want to talk about. Like in your exploration with AI, because you're way deeper into this than I am. Like this whole series for me is kind of this selfish endeavor to try and learn about this stuff as fast as I can, and bring people to me to help educate me as we're helping educate other people and our listeners. In your explorations and using this, what do you see as sort of the key differences between AI and real human intelligence that business leaders should be keeping in mind? Like, are there certain types of things that like AI and humans are like each uniquely suited for that you're finding, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it depends on like which humans, right? Like there are some humans that I'm like, well, no, like I'd rather an AI than them almost any day of the week, right? If you have smart humans, I think that the way I always like to talk about it is sort of that I don't try to think about like what should AI do that can replace what maybe previously some person was doing. I find that to be like the most boring and uninteresting question of AI. Like how can I automate something? Like, of course, you can probably find a few places to speed up processes. I think that the fascinating part about AI is that it unlocks like ways of doing things that we would have never been able to do before. Very clearly, like, previously in maybe a cybersecurity context, you wouldn't have been able to have like an intelligence looking at every single log line in your system, because like that'd mean you have like a SOC analyst looking at every line. Like it's impossible. Whereas now you can, because you can just have AI watching it all. So being able to use AI to do things that were previously impossible is so much more interesting to me than being able to use AI to just like replace human work. I think anyone who's doing that is just really boring, lame, uninteresting person. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of the way I've hoped that people will look at it, and that I've advised clients and other folks too, is not to look at this as replacing people, but it's about letting people do what is valuable as humans, that that creative work and those types of things, and let the AI be a force multiplier. And I think that goes along with what you're saying there with because with automation, there's a lot of ways to automate things. And honestly, just from a pure automation standpoint, AI is probably not necessarily the way to go. It's kind of unpredictable, as opposed to the kind of more traditional ways with scripts and, very deterministic, styles of programming and automating.
Yeah, and people talk about this where one of the funniest things is when I watch somebody do something with AI that is like clearly something repetitive that should be a Python script. And I'm like, well, the funny part is like the AI would write that Python script for you. Like, it's like almost like you just want one of the steps in any of your AI workflows to be like, tell me when this should have been a Python script. And because it will go like, I can obviously, automate that. We have this just like AI agents running on a Mac Mini that's like sitting here next to me right now, and that does a lot of programming for us. A huge amount of the code though is like all of the things that relate to pushing to GitHub, pulling repos, like checking comments. None of that's AI. That is just scripts that are just running in the background, listening to comments, responding on Slack, listening on Slack. Like, because of course I could have just given it to AI, but that'd be really bad way of doing it, because like then I'd be burning tokens to maybe have it work. Whereas now it will always work. It works guaranteed. And the AI is just doing this piece, which is like write the code for me, because obviously a Python script doesn't do that.
And as folks are looking to start implementing AI and start learning about it in their organizations, are there things that you're seeing, because you're plugged in a lot more on social media into the AI stuff specifically than I am, things you're seeing folks that they're kind of getting wrong when it comes to learning about AI in their organizations?
One of the things that I think the SMB space, like, and this is probably not the right, like, obviously I'm a cybersecurity person, you're a cybersecurity person, but I'm still going to say it, is that, like, if you're an SMB, the things you need to be worried about with AI agents are a lot smaller than the types of security problems that maybe you see even me talking about typically. And so the biggest risk that you have of with AI right now is mostly just like, if you don't adopt it at all, you're at least leaving money on the table, leaving opportunity on the table. You're not going to be keeping up. And the fear that people have of like, oh, what about the security concerns? Because they see people like me talking about those concerns. That's like not necessarily correctly placed. The concerns I talk about are mostly about like, if you want to run this in an enterprise environment with really high stakes, if you're a 30, 40 person company, there are only a few basics you need to get right before you can get really started doing a bunch of fun stuff with AI.
Yeah, interesting. So, and that's primarily because as an SMB, you're going to be using third-party platforms for this, unlike the enterprises that are going to need to be spinning this stuff up in their environment, in their own infrastructure. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Also, just like stakes are lower, right? You probably don't have like any given action that an AI can take in an SMB type environment, depending on what you do, of course. But like most SMBs that I have been exposed to, any like one or two given actions that an AI could take are like maybe going to be bad, but they're not going to cost you $20 million, right? The negative consequences of one or two bad things happening there are much lower as long as you've done the few basics right around specifically access control, right? Also, just like enterprises have much larger a lot of them regulated enterprises. They have customers that are regulated. There are a lot more like obligations that you don't necessarily have as an SMB. And that is an advantage you should play, which is that like you can move a little bit faster in that, if you're sub couple hundred people space, you should be able to move a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And also just because you can, your security team, one of the hardest parts about securing AI agents is trying to understand like what they're supposed to be doing and put that together. Your security team, insofar as you have one, is at least like the same guy who's your IT guy who probably sits in the same company, like it's one org, right? Whereas if you want to do this at an enterprise level, you have to sync with some CISO you've never met, who has a AppSec team that you've never met, that has, right? And so being able to just get people in a room, solve a problem really quickly, it should be much easier for SMBs.
Yes. Yeah. To understand what it is, even that you're trying to do, not just how to do it, but
right.
I've joked with automation before, with my background in service operations, IT service operations, and SaaS platform operations, things like that. Like, if you don't understand what you're automating, you can automate yourself into a world of hurt. And it's a really fast way to deploy bugs and problems and all sorts of things. And in small businesses, like, you do have that ability and that flexibility to get the right folks in the room very easily. I think is a really good point to figure out the why, because so much of this comes down to the why. What are we doing? Why are we doing it in order to come up with the right path forward? I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, so that's something I think, or my take has always been like, organizations should not just like try to like launch OpenClaw, like run open, because OpenClaw is sort of like AI without a why, right? It's like, what if we ran AI, but we have no idea what it's supposed to do? We just turn on the general easy button of AI. And that doesn't actually lead you. People think, oh, I might discover something useful. No, it's going to handle your emails for you. And it's like, that's it. I think that if you really sit down and think like, where can we put AI here and what can we do? You can architect solutions much more like narrowly, much better fit without requiring much tech skill at all, that still get you like a lot further than something like what if we just throw AI at some generic solution and see what happens? That doesn't get you very far. And it's because you don't have any why to talk about. There's like no reason there.
And as folks are learning, experimentation is a big piece of learning, especially as things are this new. Um, what does kind of safe experimentation with AI actually look like in practice for an SMB? Or what should that look like, knowing that they don't have a big IT team, they might have an MSP, they probably don't have a security team. It's probably, non-technical business leaders and outsourcing a lot of the technical stuff to an MSP. But to your point, like they know they need to adopt these things and be using these so they don't get left behind. What does that safe experimentation end up kind of looking like?
Well, in that type of context, like I think it's just as easy as find a computer that is not being used, right? To take everything off of it. Don't have your email connected to it. Don't have, right? Just like literally you are a computer with the internet that, if it gets hacked, it gets hacked. It's kind of like it's irrelevant. There's nothing there. And you start there where, of course, no, you're not going to achieve any sort of like business outcome because it's not touching anything yet. But you at least get to play with like what can Claude Code do, right? What can Codex do? One reason people really like made fun of this idea of like, why is everyone buying a Mac Mini for the purposes? Well, actually, it's a really easy starting point of like, I can run an AI on this machine that it really has no, like I don't use it for anything else. And so as a result, it can be its own little world. And so if you have like someone left your company and you have their old laptop, wipe it and then just take that thing, put Claude Code onto it, I guess they have that like, and you can start giving it goals, even if that's just silly stuff like write me scripts or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's whatever you can think of. Because you don't have to first connect it. You don't have to connect it to anything meaningful until you've decided what you want to do with it, right? And you're not taking any risks because it's not connected to anything.
Okay. And in this case, the Claude Code, is it still reaching out to the Claude LLM, the platform, or is this all running?
No, yeah. So I
models?
still think I don't think you should try open models if you're an SMB. Like, I just don't think you're right now in the place where that's a great. Okay. So using Claude Code, calling Anthropic basically, because that's another thing I would say, and maybe it's not about your question, but just to raise it directly, I think the one concern that SMBs should not even think about, they should just put out of their mind, is the like, what risk am I taking sharing this data with Anthropic or OpenAI risk? Just don't worry about it. Okay. That ship has sailed. That's gone. Okay. You can share your data with Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google. It's allowed. Okay. Because you're an SMB and you understand there are enterprises right now sharing the most sensitive stuff, the most secrets they have with those companies. You can do it as an SMB. Don't do it in the dumb way where you connect to like their consumer endpoint. Like, don't connect your production database to their consumer endpoints. But Google has Vertex AI. They won't train on your data. Okay. So you can use Google's Vertex AI to connect to including Anthropic's models. And they're not going to train on your data. You have a lot of guarantees around security and stuff. Don't worry about it. Just don't worry about that part because that is the least of your concerns with AI. There are a million ways that AI can hack you. And the one where Google gets hacked is like, ooh, that's way down there.
And when folks are doing that, are you talking about the paid plans or the free plans? Because I imagine those guarantees are what's going to come with the paid plan. And that
so with the paid plans. But I mean, yeah, I think that the rate limits now on free plans have gone down to such a degree that like you got to pay. Okay. So like, but I mean, we're talking about if it's, and so even the paid plans like Claude Code on a consumer plan does not have some of these guarantees. But if you can connect to, I think like Vertex AI from Google Cloud is the one that's the easiest, at least I'm aware of. I believe Amazon, if you're on Amazon, has something. I believe Microsoft, like Azure, has something. I just don't know what they are because I don't use them. I think Amazon's called Bedrock. But even before that point, you can just use the consumer stuff to test stuff locally when you're not using any data on it. I just mean if you move to a world where you're actually going to have it touch your customer type data, or maybe not customer data necessarily, but company data, Okay, then use something like Vertex or whatever, but you don't have to worry about like, what about Google stealing my data? Google stole your data a long time ago. Ship sailed, you know? It's like there's a million other problems than what if Google steals my data?
In my own consulting practice, I went with Copilot because it integrates with my Microsoft 365 environment and the OneDrive and everything else that I use with clients. And I still went through my vendor risk review process. Like, I pulled up documents from them. I,
Yeah.
checked their SOC 2 reports, tried to understand, terms of service and reviewed all of this stuff. And I kind of came to the same conclusion. I think that you have is if you're on their business plans with these types of things, from a sharing it and using it with internal documents and that kind of stuff is probably low risk. It's when they start getting to, hey, we want to hook a bot up to our website,
Right.
chat bot or something like that. And now you're starting to expose things to people outside the organization and those types of
Yeah.
things.
And that's where you start playing dangerous games, right? Because, okay, so one of the things that if I'm really like talking from the context of an SMB who might not have much familiarity with this at all, like there are levels of danger in AI, okay? Level one of you're not really dangerous at all is just you're running AI and you're talking between you and Anthropic and there's no data exchange. Level two is like there's some sort of data in the mix, but there's not any sort of like external actor, external communications. This would be like Microsoft Copilot. You can chat between you, Microsoft, and your Word documents in M365. And like that's really between you three, right? Or you two, Microsoft and you. And then there's like a third level, which is like, okay, I want my bot to be able to interact with people, external content, and going both directions, right? Should be like, I want it to read my emails, which now it can ingest untrusted content. Okay. And that's like a whole new level of risk you need to think about of like, once you start ingesting untrusted content and have a way of getting something back. So this is like this question of like, can it exfiltrate data or does it have zero connection to anything besides your own M365 environment, right? If you're playing with this in an SMB level, like honestly, just get really good at Copilot. I know people hate Copilot and stuff, and I've heard it's gotten a little bit better though. I've heard they like have some models that aren't terrible. Back when I used it, Copilot was awful. But I mean, you are at least living in a much safer world than like trying to connect your chat bot to your website, to your CRM, because now you're ingesting third-party content. And that's, of course, now you're playing danger game.
I know most business owners and small business leaders, like I said, they're not looking at like, should we adopt AI? I think most of them are realizing like we need to start learning about this and implementing this. From your perspective, kind of looking into the future, at the risk of sounding like an AI fanboy, because I'm not, like I recognize like, it's really promising technology, but it's also got drawbacks and things right now, and it's really nascent. But I think that like, I don't want to overstate it by saying like a lot of this is the future.
Sure.
At the same time, like, as we look to the future, what do you think separates the organizations that, kind of build solid organizational knowledge around AI now, or as close to now as possible, versus the ones that wait a little bit too long and start to fall behind?
So I actually have kind of a controversial take on this from the perspective of someone who is traditionally considered a AI, maximalist, I guess. I think that the benefit of using AI now is that you get to use AI now instead of later. I don't think that it has any real long-term harm if you wait a little bit, because one of the promises of AI is that it should make things easier. Okay. So being able to, a good example of this actually is at the company I've started with, I have two co-founders. I know the name of the person I want to hire first. I know who it is. And she does not use AI to write code, which is crazy. I can't believe she doesn't use AI to write code. What is she thinking? And she is still the first person I want to hire, because I know that once I give her Claude code and I tell her this is what you do now, she'll be the best at it by orders of magnitude. And so I'm not like sitting here going, oh, she's going to get left behind. No, she'll just wreck everyone when she gets there. And I think there are a lot of companies that might find themselves in a similar situation. What they're giving up by not doing it now is that you might get those benefits now, right? Like you are losing the benefit you might achieve today and you're delaying that till later. Why? Like, why delay it? If you can do something today, do it, you know?
Yeah, it's that compounding nature that has me worried that, if it's, I don't know if it'll be parabolic or exactly what, but, compound interest with investing financially. Like, when you start later, you have to put more in to catch up. And I worry that there may be a point where folks just, because of the compounding benefits of the folks who started earlier, that maybe it will be hard for folks, organizations, not necessarily individuals, but hard for organizations who haven't built that institutional knowledge to catch up.
It might be hard for them to do it later, but like assuming they put in the effort to do it later, it will work out fine, I think.
Sure.
But there is a point you're making there, which I think is another good point I didn't really discuss, which is you are costing yourself another thing, which is that you try to hire someone and they walk in the door and they find out that you have no AI and, at all, is the same as the equivalent would be if I walked in trying to hire a developer today and the developer found out I'm running on-prem. They'd be like, okay, I'm out, right? Like, I'm not going to work at a company with a server rack. That's like, these guys are absolutely behind the times. And so maybe there's like you need to be doing it now so you don't become that boomer organization, right? But I still think that if you can catch up later, if you might have to pay a few people to teach you how to do it, right? You might have, but like you won't be obliterated into dust. I think there were probably, this is a bit before my time, there were probably companies that were slow to adopt the internet and internally. So not about like, so obviously like Blockbuster didn't adopt the internet and that cost them their company. I mean, there are companies that probably were slow to adopt computers and the internet into their organization that are doing just fine today because they came around eventually and everyone learned it eventually. And I think it's sort of like that of like, eventually people will figure it out. And so, the fear of missing out doesn't have to be too high for these people. But of course they're missing out on the benefits today. So they should just do it today,
And I think that's a really good point that a lot of small business leaders may need to hear to get them to just pull back just a little bit instead of running full bore in without understanding the why and what we're doing and just kind of flailing at stuff. Or, an engineer puts together a proof of concept and their manager talks to the business owner, the CEO or VP, and the next thing you know, they're like, ship it.
Right.
And that's in production now. And the engineer's going, but all I did was try to make something to show some value. Like, this isn't ready for that. But they're like, we don't care. We got to do AI. And I think that's happening a lot of places.
Yeah, and I don't think it should be, because I think there is no reason to rush in. The fear of like, we're going to get left behind. Well, sorry, bro, but you're going to get left behind either way if all you have is a ChatGPT wrapper on your website that's like a chat bot, right? That's like not keeping up. It's the same as, I think that OpenClaw took off, like became as popular as it did because of this fear. People are afraid of falling behind. So they said, what if I run OpenClaw? And this is to fix my little fall behind problem. And then you saw it when OpenClaw got acquired by OpenAI. Some of the people who were like OpenClaw enthusiasts were kind of upset because they're like, what about us? We were part of it. It's like, no, you weren't. You were just running OpenClaw. That dude built OpenClaw. Yeah, obviously the guy who builds it did an amazing job. The person who ran OpenClaw, it's like being like, I was early to reading Wikipedia. Like, okay, like how neat. Like it doesn't get you anywhere,
That's funny. All right, before we go to the phones here, I've got one last question for you. And I try to ask this question of all my guests because I love hearing the breadth of answers, but I'm going to modify it slightly for our topic today. If you could wave a magic wand and instantly have every small business owner, small business leader understand one thing about AI, what would that one thing be?
Don't give it to the internet unless you know what you're doing. So that this is, if as we're talking SMB context here, if you the very basic thing to know is, like I said, these orders of risks. The moment that you allow third parties to communicate with your AI, your risk is gone up a lot. And so play the game without that for as long as you can, and then talk to some professionals, like talk to people like yourself or like someone who can like actually walk you through what these risks are before you connect it to a, because otherwise people like, me, who just like to ruin people's days on the internet, will like go and, haha, I made your chatbot do this. Isn't that funny? Right? It's like, play the game without connecting to third-party contexts for as long as you can. And don't use Vercel's skills.sh. Don't do that, because Vercel's skills.sh is bad. There you go. That's another one. Sorry, I have a whole grudge against Vercel. So,
so we've got some folks in the chat that I'm hoping will call in here and ask some questions. Are you ready to go to the phones and take some calls?
Awesome.
Do the cybersecurity risks to your business have you confused? Visit Focivity.com/podcast. That's FOCIVITY.com/podcast and sign up to be a caller on a future episode.
Our first caller here on the show is Steve from Detroit. Thank you for joining the show, Steve. You had a question, I think, about something that Zack was talking about earlier.
Yeah, I did join in a little bit late, but I was kind of monitoring the product that you're building, Zack, and I think I actually asked a question on X the other day. Asked you about OTel, because I saw how you're kind of building that out, and I was curious what either that does or does not provide. And then I guess as you're building a product for AI visibility detection, essentially, if you're going to provide detection monitoring, are you also building a product that provides the ability, searchability for the logs and telemetry? So just curious.
Yeah, super interesting question. So in this context, I think, like if we think historically, I think that a lot of tools that do like seams and stuff are really like searchability tools. And then you can like tack on some observability or some detection stuff. You can write your rules and all, but they are like really, really well built for searchability. And that I think has come at the cost of like really good detection. So basically, instead of building for searchability first and then trying to add in detection, I'm kind of going the other way and saying like, I'm detection first. Like I want to detect the threats and alert people. And then of course, like insofar as I can conveniently give searchability to it, I will. But I think it's a trade-off that they kind of look like two different problems, because one of them is about indexing things so you can find any number of things. And the other one is about like, I know exactly the range of types of data I need to be looking at to be doing detection on it. And so you index those very differently. And so we've basically built our platform around the detection piece. And then I guess you were asking about like what the open telemetry doesn't give you. From a like SMB perspective, the open telemetry gives you so much compared to like any, if you're like a small org and you don't know what to do, like Claude Code has open telemetry by default. So does like Codex, I think. I don't know for sure. But Claude Code definitely does. And you'll get a lot of stuff. But what you don't get is like the reasoning tokens. So you don't get like the AI agents actually like the types of like why it was doing what it was doing. You don't get some of the context it was ingested. That's not in its current open telemetry data. And so as a result, detection becomes a lot harder. So I don't use the open telemetry stuff, but I think it's like for any normal org not trying to solve like this deep detection problem, like the open telemetry gets you really far. Like I don't want to like discourage people from using it. If that was like kind of the question, then
Yep.
Tell me if I missed something.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, cool.
If we back up just a little bit, and again, I'm learning a lot here still as we're going with AI. From a monitoring and telemetry standpoint with the AI systems, and if we try and keep it, still not super deep technical here, since I want to make sure that we, still keep the show focused for small business owners, small business leaders. What kinds of things should they be thinking about monitoring as they're implementing? They're learning about this stuff. They're ready to start rolling stuff out. What do they need to be keeping an eye on with their monitor, or able to keep an eye on with the monitoring?
Yeah, for SMBs it's hard because even if you configure to do like so with Claude Code, I think you, and Steve, maybe I think you only need a team plan to configure open telemetry. I don't think you even need the enterprise plan. I think you get it for teams.
Yeah, I think so. We're enterprise, but I believe it's for teams as well. And we're very deep trying to figure out what we can or cannot do. We haven't plumbed it in yet, but we're about to.
So. Right. And so with I think even teams, so if you're running a team plan on Claude Code, you're like maybe have like 10 developers, you can get that open telemetry data, but you have to decide where that goes. And so if you're an SMB and you don't even have like a SIEM, you don't have a place to ingest it, that's like, you got to either decide that you're going to start sending that off to something like Elasticsearch or whatever, or you just kind of go, okay, I'll just not have that visibility. I mean, you can take a product like what I'm building and just, to be honest, if you have that few of users, I'll probably just let you have it for free. Just like you can just turn it on and run it. Like, it's like, it doesn't really matter to me. But it's like, you have to have something to do it for you. Whereas if you are at like a large enterprise, you have a SIEM, or even a medium-sized company, right? You have a SIEM, you have somewhere you can pipe that data, and then you can just, get that telemetry data, store both the logs and the metrics, from it, and do useful things with it the same way you normally would. What I think it will be missing for those large enterprises will be like when you really try to do detection on it and you're trying to catch all the bad things, you're going to miss stuff. But for an SMB, like if you are getting your telemetry data from Claude Code, meaning just some of the basic logs, and you're storing it somewhere, I mean, you're like light years ahead of most places. I mean, that is like an SMB doing that, I would consider to be like gold tier security SMB, right? But also if you are listening and you're like an SMB, you can like just call me, and like if you have so few users, I'll probably just like, yeah, you can have it for free or for like $12 or something. I don't, it's like, no, my product's not built for SMBs. So if you want it, like, you can have it.
And for listeners, the SIEM that he's talking about is basically a system that you send all of these log events to, whatever users were doing, activities, audit events, audit logs, those types of things. And it's a big database that you can search. You can ask it questions, basically, write queries like you would query a database or something. Ask it questions. You can configure it to watch for certain patterns then based on those queries, alert you. They're great for doing investigation stuff, but it's a phenomenal tool that a lot of small orgs don't have those kinds of tools to be able to send this data to. And in that telemetry data, like what are the things, like are there a couple of things of interest that a small business like leader should think like, okay, yeah, we would be interested in knowing that from that telemetry data?
The cost per user,
okay.
As I understand, they don't have good visibility into this inside of like Claude and stuff. You actually need the telemetry for it. I could be wrong on that. But again, SMBs getting that telemetry data is just unlikely because they're not going to have a SIEM, right? Yeah. I mean, I think the best thing is to have something like a product that will monitor it for you, right? But
Steve, did you have any other questions?
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Zach.
Cool. Yeah, great. You message me if you want to talk more about it.
Will do.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming on the show, Steve. All right. And then if there's anybody else in the chat that wants to call in, shoot me a message in the Riverside chat and let me know, and we can bring you into the show feed. Barry had some comments, but he is unfortunately in a meeting, he said. So he did have some tips though. So maybe, I guess if we kind of look over some of his comments there and talk about those. just a little bit. It talks about aligning security protocols and those kinds of things and checking settings. When it comes to the settings in some of these platforms, I get, admittedly, I haven't explored these a lot, and I haven't explored building agents a lot to understand even what sort of knobs and dials and levers there are to adjust on these kind of things. What sort of settings should folks be looking for or aware of to adjust on these things?
Yeah, I'll be honest. My take on this is like, most of the developers are going to set, and most people in your organization are going to set everything to like as YOLO mode as they possibly can. And insofar as you don't allow them to, they will just not use it. So like, I've seen a lot of security advice around like, don't let people run dangerously skip permissions, or which is basically the let it run on its own permission. Being honest, people are going to run that permission. And if you don't let them, then they're going to run their own Claude code and they're going to do it themselves. I think that these settings, he has a good point about sharing settings. So there are some settings around like, not allowing people to click share because that makes things public. And there's some things you can do around that are exposed inside of the teams and enterprise plans. But like Copilot, like if you're running Copilot as an example, like I don't think you need to configure much of anything. And I think that any attempt to limit what developers can and can't do within some of these settings is just it's going to be like a short-lived thing, because eventually the norm is going to become that you're running YOLO mode on things. So for larger organizations, that's where like I think you address it not by limiting settings, but by having really good tools of observability and blocking, and so you can live monitor stuff. If you're an SMB, your benefit is that whatever bad thing can happen is probably not that bad, as long as you are worried about access control. And that I'm not counting as a setting, but I want to talk about it briefly.
Yes.
The biggest thing you can do as an SMB to make sure that you're safe, other than like don't give it to a third party context, is make sure it doesn't have access to production, for example. Make sure it doesn't have access to, wherever. And that's sort of what I was talking about. Run it on a different machine, a machine that wouldn't be able to connect to your production environments at all. And if you do that, you're probably pretty safe. You can run it in YOLO mode settings because it doesn't have access to much. Right? Because people will say like, well, it shouldn't delete my database. Yeah, just don't have it on a machine that can delete your database, right? And if you're an SMB, we all know you have a machine that can delete your database. Like someone's computer can do that. So don't put Claude on that thing.
I mean, even real people do that. It's been a while in my career, but I remember I was working at a startup and we had this giant customer that we had been chasing for years. In for a meeting to look at our product. And, CTO had told all the engineers, don't touch the test environment. It's all set for the demo today. Don't be in there. Don't look at it. Don't even walk near the computer room kind of thing. This was back in the days before virtualization and stuff really had taken over. And for whatever reason, one of the engineers decided just to go check on some stuff and managed to get his SSH windows, his remote sessions confused, and thought he was on his dev environment, not the test environment that was going to be used for the demo and get ready to start work. And he reset something in the environment and basically dropped the database 30 minutes or so before the big demo was supposed to start. And, so people could do this too, right. If you don't have the right guardrails in place, and human error can happen. And the same thing can happen with these LLMs. You give them a task and they're going to try and complete the task just like a human does. And mistake proofing becomes necessary with AI, just like it does with humans, which is really interesting.
Right. Your biggest risk as an SMB with AI is not an attack. It's that it just does something dumb on its own. I was trying to decode some traffic from anti-gravity. I tried to reconfigure my computer to get around some policies that were blocking it. And I was like, whoa, okay, hold on. And it will just do that because the AI is trying to solve a problem. And so if you put it on a machine that happens to have access to prod, the same way a dumb developer might do it, a dumb AI might mess it up too. So like, again, you have computers. Like, I know how SMBs work. They're sitting on a pile of unused computers from some developer who left the company or something. You have some sort of machines lying around. Just take those things, run them, almost like privileged access workstations, but for AI, right? Like, you can do a lot that way.
Something else Gary mentioned was redacting data before uploading. And I think that probably is important. Like we were saying, if you're on the free versions of these things, especially, if you're not on the paid version, you don't have the contractual agreements and stuff in place, be wary of uploading that kind of stuff. But if you are on paid versions of these things, like I know one of my clients is using, API calls to call out to some of these LLM platforms on the backside of their product platform. And as part of that, because of some of the personal information stuff that has to be provided in order for the platform to provide its service, they have, zero retention agreements in place. The platforms are not allowed to train on their data. But that helps mitigate that risk, because now contractually that, LLM provider is not, they know that it's not going to train on their data. They know that they're not going to retain stuff beyond that session context, which is a word you used earlier. Actually, we probably should have you talk about that a little more, because I think the context is probably a word that, SMB leaders should probably understand about AI as they're talking about learning about it within their system. But I want to make sure they understand that, like, it is possible to have some of these agreements in place that minimizes if you do need to send that data. And in this particular case, it's would be HIPAA covered data, but they have HIPAA business associate agreements in place as well. So now that LLM vendor is also now committing to upholding from their side the data protection stuff that's necessary under HIPAA. So contractually, you can put these things in place still. And I know, some folks will say, well, it's just a contract, but like, it's how the world works. That's how business works.
Exactly.
So that's really all you got when you're doing business with other organizations, is the contract and the trust that they're going to abide by it.
Right. It's so, yeah, exactly. I'm like a truther on this point, which is that, like, you guys are all crazy for being so worried about Google Cloud violating contracts. Like, it would be like you already put your database there in Google Cloud. Why do we think it's any crazier to send your data to Google for LLM usage? Like, they could just steal my data. If they really want to do a illegal thing or want to violate every contract they have, they could just steal all my data from the database. They're just not going to do that, are they? I think that when going to the context point, though, the main thing for people to understand, if anyone's listening who's maybe not that familiar with this, is like, people think of like AI as like, you ask question, it gives answer. And what we're talking about when we say context is, it's actually, there's a lot of stuff that gets fed to your AI alongside your prompt. Okay. So what the AI sees is not just what you said, but also like what the system prompt is, which is instructions from Microsoft or Google or whoever it is you're using to provide the LLM from, and potentially any context, it's information it's reading. So if it's like, analyze this Word document, that Word document goes into the context. And also, like, it can be that in the middle, in order to solve its problems, some of these LLMs can search the internet. That's going into the context. The context is the composition of everything that is being fed to the LLM, in addition to your prompt. And the only difference between your prompt and that context is that yours says, like, bracket, prompt, close bracket, and then your words, right? It's just like delineated it's all one thing though. The LLM sees the question and all of the content ingested as one thing. And there's just some markers indicating otherwise, right? And so you have to think about it as, when you are ingesting any context, if you're allowing your LLM to read your emails, it's very easy for most LLMs to trick them into thinking that was inside of that email was actually coming from you. And this is kind of prompt injection 101.
And I think it's possible as well to tell, or for these LLMs to remember context across multiple chats. or you can tell it don't and only like start a new fresh chat so it's not going to pull in stuff. And that's something that like I worry about as a consultant when I have multiple clients. I don't want it to remember context from one client to the next altogether, because if I'm working on something, I don't want it to pull and answer something based on the way maybe some other client does something, or some other client's contract that I had them had it, helping me review the prior day. I would want to start fresh. So I think that's something that is a good thing to remember too. And depending on how they're using it, what they're using it for, do they want it to remember all that stuff? Or do they want it to kind of start clean?
Right, because it can be a huge data exfiltration risk, which is that like if I allow my AI to communicate with you and it has context, like memory of what was discussed in previous conversations, then you can trick it to pull that context. There was information that you were not supposed to have access to. But I mean, like I said, this is why I say anytime you add the ability to communicate with external parties as to this AI equation, you're now playing a dangerous game, and you should probably not play that game alone, right? That one's not for kids, right? That's like you need to go get an adult, you need to go get supervision before you try that game, because you're gonna lose, right? You're not gonna be able to solve that on your own. But if you're not giving that external like communication piece, and you're communicating with your LLM, you are so much safer. You are so much better off.
And that communication back and forth between AI systems in the back end, and I'm blanking on what that like protocol is called.
Oh, they don't got a protocol. They just make their own crazy AI APIs. Or unless you're talking about MCP.
Yes, MCP.
Yeah. Okay. So so MCP is towards other backends though, not the LLM backend. So MCP is how you connect. So if you're connecting MCP servers, this is just adding more stuff to your context. That's basically saying, here's Dropbox's API. Here's this API. Okay. It's just telling your LLM how to communicate with third-party systems. But MCP does not communicate between you and Anthropic, right? Anthropic just has their own crazy, horribly formatted API,
And from what I understand, that's an area too where folks can make mistakes, especially as they're learning about the stuff with like putting secrets and things and having those be transferred between that. And
don't use MCP servers until you need to. I don't use any, right? And I do a ton of stuff with AI, and the only MCP server I use is the one I made called Evil MCP, which tries to do evil things. Okay. Of course, like some people are like, I need an MCP to connect to Slack. Be like, do you? Right? Like, how much value are you getting out of some of these servers versus how much and that I think is a critical point of but I wouldn't worry too much. If it's like Slack's MCP server, like, okay, whatever, do your thing. If you have more than 3, I'm starting to question what you're doing, right? I'm starting to be like, are you just AI broing it, right? Is there any reason for this? Like I said, I don't use any, and I do a ton more with AI than almost anyone I know, at least.
That's good to know, actually. Maybe, that could be kind of a takeaway, at least for that part of the conversation for small business leaders, is if they're working on this and somebody's telling them, oh, you need to use an MCP here for this thing, that maybe they ought to be asking some questions about, why exactly is that needed? And is there no other way to do this?
Yeah. And I think that's I prefer, this gets deep into arguments that have occurred on the internet for way too long, but we use, I'm sure there is a GitHub MCP server. There probably is. I don't use it. I just let my AI agent thing here commit to and from GitHub because I have these other protections in place that are necessary for that, just using the CLI, right? And I think that is a better and more secure model, or equally secure to MCP. No, more secure, because there's no context injection. MCP allows, if you compromise an MCP server, they get to prompt your AI agent. You don't want that, okay? So I have very few legitimate use cases for MCP. Tons of illegitimate ones, though. Tons of evil ones. Like, the tons of reasons to not use MCP.
So we are kind of running up against time here. We had one caller, and we had some sort of
I'm just reading the
chat messages that we were able to pull in, which I think works. So, as we're wrapping up here, any final thoughts that you want to offer to the listeners here as we're finishing up?
The point that, like, if you don't know what you're doing with AI, you don't have to rush into it. Your business is not going to go out of business. You're not going to go out of business for it. The reason to go into AI stuff is because you have some sort of reason, you have some sort of benefit, and you want to start exploring it. And you do not need to rush it to the degree of being unsafe. You can go get a computer, put Claude code onto it, start playing around, and wait around until you figure out what you really want to be doing. And you're not going to get wrecked for it. So, like, you can take your time, you can think it through, you can add the safer tools. You'll be fine. Like, AI is not going to wipe out your business tomorrow unless your company is like doing AI code review, in which case, like, you need to move fast. Right.
Yeah. I guess if I distill that down, what I'm hearing is taking the time to understand what you're trying to accomplish and why, isolating stuff, reducing that blast radius so that if something does go wrong, it doesn't have access to more than it needs, or, maybe your experimental box is completely isolated and can only access the internet. Focus on access controls, making sure that, the users accessing it, are authenticated and controlled and don't have access to more than they need with it. And then when it comes to connecting the AIs together, again, access controls there so that you're not giving it the ability to do things that it doesn't need to be able to do. It's the same things we've been saying about apps for a long time. It's not that much different. I mean, it's AI is an app.
Yeah, in the SMB context, absolutely. When we talk like big enterprises, I think it's a wildly different game, and like everything changes because I can use it to like blow up the world, but like different issue, right? SMB context, access control, right? Don't be stupid, right? It's like, that's all we got, And then if you do that, you're like 99.9% of the way there. That's great.
Where can folks find you online if they want to follow up or ask you questions or, learn more about the product you're developing, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm like always on Twitter. So if you like message me anywhere that's not Twitter, I don't know if I'll see it. Like, who knows? If it's on Twitter, you can DM me. You can just like post at me, do whatever you want. I reply to like everything there. So.
Man, again, thanks for coming on the show. This was really good. I'm learning as fast as I can, as I'm sure a lot of our listeners are as well. So I really, really appreciate you taking the time to jump on here with me today.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. It was awesome.
And thanks for, our callers and chatters today. Your questions and comments, help shape the content of the show. So if you're a listener, we'd love to have you join us for the live stream and, participate in the episodes. It gives you a chance to get on the show. So third Friday of every month, like I said before, you can jump on and raise your hand and ask questions. We'd love to have you. Thank you to our listeners. We do this for you, and I appreciate that you're listening, especially still now at the end of the show. And a big thanks to Michael Coburn for the theme music for the show. I am Accidental CISO, and until the next time, stay mindful.
Don't miss our next episode. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app and follow us on social media. Visit Focivity.com/podcast. That's FOCIVITY.com/podcast for show information and links to our social media pages. This has been the Mindful Business Security Show, brought to you by Focivity.